3 months after the papers were signed, she sent him a voice message at 1:47 in the morning. Her words were slurred, not from alcohol, from exhaustion. She said, "I keep having this dream where I'm walking through our old house, but all the doors are locked from the inside." Her therapist later told him what that dream actually meant, and when you understand the psychology behind it, you'll see why almost every divorced woman, regardless of who filed first, ends up in the same psychological trap. A trap she built herself, a trap she can't name, and a trap that reveals one of Robert Greene's most brutal observations about human nature. We do on fear loss. We fear the moment we realize what we lost. I'm going to show you what happens inside her mind after the divorce. Not the version she posts online. Not the story she tells her friends. The real version. The one playing out in her psychology every single day. And I'm going to show you why this pattern is so predictable that Carl Jung called it the return of the rejected shadow. Stay with me, because what you're about to learn will change how you see every divorce that's ever happened around you. Let's start with something nobody talks about. When a woman leaves a marriage, she's not just leaving a man, she's executing what Machiavelli called the violent reordering of stable power. And here's what makes that so dangerous for her. The human mind is wired to protect familiar structures, even broken ones. When she destroys that structure, her brain doesn't celebrate freedom, it panics. Robert Greene explains this perfectly in his work on power dynamics. He says, "The person who breaks the established order always suffers more than the person who was broken by it." Why? Because the one who stays didn't choose the chaos. The one who leaves has to live with the fact that they created it. That knowledge becomes a psychological weight that grows heavier with time, not lighter. Here's how it starts. The first 60 days after she leaves, her brain floods with what neuroscience calls decision justification chemicals. It's not happiness. It's her nervous system trying to protect her from the terror of her own choice. She needs to believe she made the right move, so her mind builds a story where leaving was brave, where staying would have been weak, where you were the problem and she was the solution. During this phase, she'd change everything. New apartment, new routines, new clothes. She's not redecorating her life, she's trying to outrun her own thoughts. Because if she sits still for even 5 minutes, a question starts creeping in from the back of her mind. A question she's not ready to answer yet. What if I was wrong? Jung understood this mechanism. He called it the inflation of the ego before the collapse. When someone makes a massive life decision, the ego temporarily swells to protect itself from doubt. She has to feel bigger, stronger, more certain than she actually is. Because the alternative, admitting she might have destroyed something she needed, is too terrifying to consider. So instead, she performs. Every social media post is a declaration. Every conversation with friends is a defense. She's not living her new life. She's prosecuting her old one. And you, whether you deserve it or not, become the villain in a story she needs to tell herself to survive. But here's where the psychology gets interesting. Robert Greene teaches that every performance has a shelf life. Eventually, the audience gets bored. Eventually, the performer gets tired. And eventually, the mask cracks. For her, that crack usually appears around month 3. And it doesn't show up where you'd expect. It shows up in her sleep. Nightmares where she's searching for something she can't find. Dreams where she's trapped in places that used to feel safe. Her subconscious is trying to tell her something her waking mind refuses to hear. You weren't the prison. The marriage wasn't the cage. She's more trapped now than she ever was before. Freud called this the return of the repressed. The thoughts she's been pushing down start bubbling up in symbols, in slips of the tongue, in moments where her guard drops. She'll catch herself almost texting you about something small, almost calling you when something breaks, almost reaching for you in bed before she remembers you're not there. These aren't nostalgic accidents. They're psychological evidence that her brain is rejecting the new reality she tried to force on it. Now, here's what she does next. She accelerates. She tries to prove to herself that leaving was right by chasing what she thinks she was missing: freedom, excitement, attention, desire. She downloads the apps. She posts the photos. She says yes to dates she knows will go nowhere. And for a few weeks, the dopamine hits feel like validation. But dopamine is a liar. It tells you you're winning when you're actually just moving. And movement is not the same as progress. Schopenhauer warned about this exact trap. He said, "Desire is endless suffering, broken up by brief moments of satisfaction that only create new desires." She's caught in that loop now. Every match is a tiny high, followed by a deeper low. Every compliment is a sugar rush that leaves her crashing harder than before. What she doesn't realize yet is that she's not dating, she's searching, not for a man, for proof. Proof that better exists, proof that she was right to leave, proof that the thing she's looking for is actually out there. But the brutal truth, the one Robert Greene would never sugarcoat, is this: she's not going to find it, because what she's searching for doesn't exist in another person. It exists in the psychological stability she just destroyed. Month 4 arrives, and this is where the first real crack appears. Not in her circumstances, in her story. The narrative she's been telling herself starts to contradict the evidence. She said you never listened, but now she's realizing that the men who do listen are boring. She said you weren't spontaneous enough, but now, spontaneous just means unreliable. She said you didn't make her feel desired, but now she's learning that desire without depth is just transaction. And this is the moment where her brain does something she didn't expect. It starts rewriting the past, not consciously, not on purpose. But memory is not a recording, it's a reconstruction. And the mind reconstructs memory based on present emotional needs. Right now, her emotional need is to make sense of why she feels worse, not better. So her brain starts quietly editing the story. You start looking different in her memory, not perfect, but more real, more solid, more there. The fights she used to magnify start shrinking. The good moments she used to dismiss start glowing. She's not falling back in love with you. She's falling out of love with the fantasy she traded you for, and that realization is about to tear her apart. Robert Greene teaches that power is perception, and right now, her perception is starting to shatter, because the man she thought she'd find, the one who would justify everything, isn't showing up. Instead, she's meeting the same type over and over, different faces, same patterns, and each one teaches her something she desperately doesn't want to learn. Let me show you what her dating life actually looks like. Not the highlight reel, the pattern. She matches with a guy who seems promising. Good job, decent photos, knows how to text. They meet for drinks. He's charming for exactly 45 minutes. Then he starts talking about his ex. Or he gets handsy too fast. Or he ghosts after she doesn't invite him up. 3 dates, same script, different actors. Nietzsche said, when you stare into the abyss stares back. She's staring into the modern dating abyss right now, and what's staring back is showing her something terrifying. The marketplace she thought would value her doesn't operate on the principles she expected. It's not romantic, it's economic, and the currency isn't who she is. It's what she offers in a 30-second scroll. Here's the part that breaks her. She realizes that to these men, she's completely replaceable. They're not getting to know her. They're running auditions, swipe, message, meet, evaluate. Next. You knew her middle name. You knew why she hated Tuesdays. You knew the exact way she took her coffee and why. These men don't even know her last name, and they don't care to learn it. Jung called this the encounter with the collective shadow. She thought she was special, unique, irreplaceable. The dating world is teaching her that special doesn't matter when everyone has infinite options, and that lesson cuts deeper than any argument you two ever had, because you treated her like she mattered. These men treat her like she's provisional. Month 5. This is where the psychology shifts from confusion to panic. She's not just disappointed. She's starting to feel something darker, invisible. The matches slow down. The conversations die faster. The compliments feel automated. She's experiencing what Schopenhauer called the will's confrontation with its own emptiness. She wanted to feel wanted. Now she's learning that being wanted by strangers is not the same as being valued by someone who knows you. And here's where her mind does something fascinating. It starts building a bridge back to the past, not because she misses you specifically, but because her brain is trying to escape the pain of the present. Nostalgia isn't about the past, it's about pain management. When the present hurts too much, memory becomes morphine. She starts doing things she swore she wouldn't, checking your social media, asking mutual friends about you, scrolling through old photos she promised herself she'd deleted. She's not stalking you, she's auditing her decision. Her subconscious is running a cost-benefit analysis, and for the first time since she left, the numbers aren't adding up in her favor. Robert Greene warns about this exact moment in every power struggle. He says, the person who breaks away must immediately establish superior position. If they don't, doubt creeps in, and doubt is the enemy of conviction. She needed to land somewhere better to justify the jump, but she didn't land anywhere. She's just falling in slow motion. And now she's looking back at solid ground, wondering why she ever let go. Here's what makes this phase so brutal for her. She can't admit what's happening, not to her friends, not to her family, definitely not to you. Because admitting doubt means admitting mistake, and admitting mistake means facing the fact that she destroyed something real for something imaginary. Her ego can't survive that revelation, not yet. So instead, she doubles down on the performance. More posts about self, more talk about growth and healing, more affirmations about choosing herself. But it's getting harder to sell. Her friends are starting to notice the cracks, the forced smile, the defensive tone, the way she changes the subject when anyone asks how she's really doing. They're too polite to say it, but they're thinking it. She's not thriving, she's surviving, barely. Marcus Aurelius taught, the obstacle is the way, but she's learning a darker lesson. Sometimes the obstacle was actually the foundation. You weren't blocking her path, you were the ground she stood on. And now that ground is gone. She's not flying, she's in free fall. And there's nothing below her to catch the landing. Month 6 arrives like a funeral, because this is when the chemical high finally dies completely. The decision, justification hormones run out, the adrenaline fades. What's left is just the raw truth of her daily life. And that truth is so much harder than she ever imagined it would be. Lonelier, emptier, colder. She traded known problems for unknown ones, and the unknown ones are worse. This is the month she starts having the conversation with herself, the one she's been avoiding. Was I running towards something, or was I just running? Did I leave because it was broken, or did I leave because I was broken and needed someone to blame? These questions don't have good answers, so they just loop in her head, getting louder, keeping her awake at night. Freud understood this spiral. He called it neurotic repetition. The mind asks the same question over and over, hoping for a different answer. But the answer doesn't change, it just gets clearer. And clearer is more painful, because clear means she can't hide from it anymore. The marriage wasn't perfect, but this isn't better. It's just different. And different without improvement is just change for the sake of change, which means it was pointless. Now here's what happens to her social world. And this part is devastating. The same friends who championed her decision start quietly pulling away, not because they judge her, but because her pain makes them uncomfortable. She's a living reminder that marriage can end, that safety can disappear, that maybe they're not as secure as they thought. So they stop inviting her to couple things, stop asking how she's doing, stop engaging with her posts. She becomes a ghost in her own social circle. Hobbes said, life outside society is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. She's learning a version of that now. Life outside partnership, real partnership, is all of those things. She has freedom, but freedom without connection is just isolation with better marketing, and isolation is killing her slowly. One quiet evening at a time, one unanswered text at a time, one weekend with nothing to do and no one to do it with. The panic sets in fully now. Not loud panic, quiet panic, the kind that sits in your chest and won't leave. She starts making desperate moves, reaching out to old friends, trying new hobbies, saying yes to every invitation just to avoid being alone. But none of it fills the hole, because the hole isn't about activities, it's about meaning, and meaning comes from depth, and depth takes time, and time is the one thing she can't manufacture. This is where Robert Greene's most brutal lesson kicks in, the one nobody wants to hear. He teaches that in any separation of power, the person who needs reconciliation more always loses leverage. And right now, she's the one losing leverage. Not with you necessarily, with reality itself. Because reality doesn't negotiate, it just shows you consequences and walks away. Month 7, the nightmares get worse. She's dreaming about missing flights, losing her keys, showing up late to something important. Jung would recognize these symbols immediately. They're not random. They're her subconscious screaming what her conscious mind refuses to accept. You missed it, you lost it, you're too late, the opportunity is gone, and you're the one who threw it away. But here's what makes this phase psychologically unique. She's not just mourning you, she's mourning herself. The version of herself that existed in the marriage, that version had an identity, a role, a place in the world. She was someone's wife, someone's partner, someone's person. Now she's just someone. And someone without definition feels like no one. Plato talked about forms and shadows. She's living in the shadow now, not the substance. The substance was the life she had. The shadow is this half-existence where nothing feels solid. She goes through motions, She shows up to work, she responds to messages, but there's no core anymore, just surface. And surface without depth is exhausting to maintain. Here's what her daily reality looks like now. She wakes up and checks her phone hoping for something, anything, a message that matters, an invitation that excites her, proof that today will be different. But it's just notifications, noise, nothing that touches the actual emptiness. So she gets up, goes through the routine, and counts down the hours until she can go back to sleep and escape again. Schopenhauer said, suffering is the positive element of existence. Happiness is just the temporary absence of suffering. She's learning this lesson in real time. She's not happy. She's just occasionally distracted from being unhappy. And those distractions are getting shorter, less effective. The same movie doesn't work twice. The same conversation with friends doesn't fill the void. She's building tolerance to her own coping mechanisms. Month 8. This is when the texts start. Not to you, about you. She messaged a mutual friend asking how you're doing. She'll find reasons to bring you up in conversation. She's testing the waters, trying to figure out if there's a path back, without admitting she wants one. It's strategic, it's calculated, and it's completely transparent to anyone paying attention. Robert Greene teaches that when people start asking about someone through intermediaries, they've already lost the internal battle. The question isn't whether they want to reconnect. The question is whether their pride will let them. And right now, her pride is at war with her pain. Pride says, you made the right choice, stick with it. Pain says, you made the wrong choice, fix it. The war is tearing her apart from the inside. Here's the cruel part. Around this same time, she sees something that destroys her. You, not broken, not desperate, not waiting, you're actually okay. Maybe you lost weight, maybe you picked up a new hobby, maybe you're just calmer, more present, more yourself. And that image detonates in her mind like a bomb, because it proves something she built her entire departure on denying. You were capable of change. You were capable of growth. You just didn't need her permission to do it. Nietzsche called this the transvaluation of all values. Everything she believed about the situation flips. She told herself you'd fall apart without her. You didn't. She told herself you needed her more than she needed you. The evidence suggests otherwise. She told herself leaving would force you to become better. But you became better without the force. Which means the problem wasn't that you couldn't grow. The problem was that she couldn't wait. This realization is acid on her ego, because now she has to live with a new truth. She wasn't the catalyst for your improvement. She was the obstacle. You didn't become this version of yourself because she left. You became this version despite her, or maybe because she left. And that possibility is worse than any insult you could have thrown at her during the divorce. Month 9. The depression sets in properly now. Not sadness, clinical flatness. Nothing tastes right. Nothing feels right. She's going through her life like she's underwater. Everything is muffled, distant, unreal. Jung called this the dark night of the soul. The moment when the ego's defenses collapse and the person is forced to confront the raw truth of their choices without any buffer. Her body is keeping score too. She's not sleeping well, not eating well, getting sick more often. The immune system responds to psychological stress. And right now, her stress is chronic. It's not a crisis she can solve. It's a reality she has to endure. And endurance without hope is just suffering stretched across time. She starts therapy, finally, and the therapist asks questions she's been avoiding. What were you actually running from? What did you think you'd find? What do you think you deserve? These questions don't have easy answers, so she deflects. She talks around them. She intellectualizes, but the therapist sees through it. And slowly, session by session, the truth starts leaking out. Albert Ellis taught rational emotive behavior therapy on one core principle. Most suffering comes from irrational beliefs about how life should be. Her suffering is coming from one irrational belief she held sacred. The belief that something better was waiting for her. That life was holding back joy, and all she had to do was leave to claim it. But life wasn't holding anything back. She was exactly where she was supposed to be. And she burned it down looking for an upgrade that didn't exist. Here's what makes this so psychologically devastating. She can't undo it. She can't go back. Even if you wanted her back, which you might not, the marriage that was is dead. You can't resurrect something you killed. You can only mourn it, and she's mourning it now. Publicly in therapy, privately every single night. Marcus Aurelius said, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. But he also said, some things can't be repaired once broken. And she's starting to understand that she broke something irreparable. Not just the marriage, but her own sense of judgment, her own trust in her decisions, her own belief that she knows what she wants. Month 10 arrives with a new kind of pain. The pain of watching you move on. Maybe you're dating someone. Maybe you're just living well. Either way, you're not stuck. You're not waiting. You're not holding space for her return. And that reality hits her like a physical blow, because it confirms what she's been terrified to accept. The window is closing. Time is running out. And soon, if not already, reconciliation won't even be an option. Robert Greene says, timing is everything in power dynamics. Strike too early and you reveal weakness. Strike too late and you've already lost. She's learning this lesson in the worst way possible, because now she wants to reach out. She wants to test if repair is possible, but she's paralyzed by the knowledge that reaching out admits everything. It admits she was wrong. It admits she's suffering. It admits she needs you more than you need her. And admitting that feels like psychological suicide. So instead, she does something halfway. She likes an old photo. She reacts to a story. She sends a meme with no context. These aren't accidents. They're breadcrumbs. She's trying to re-enter your awareness without actually saying what she means. It's a test. If you respond warmly, she inch closer. If you ignore her, she has plausible deniability. She was just being friendly. Nothing deeper. Machiavelli understood this tactic. He called it the appearance of retreat while advancing. She's pretending to be casual while desperately trying to rebuild a bridge she burned. But here's the problem. You can feel the desperation. Even if you can't name it, you sense it. And desperation kills attraction. It kills respect. It kills any chance of her being seen the way she wants to be seen. Month 11. This is the month where acceptance starts creeping in. Not peaceful acceptance, bitter acceptance. She's starting to realize that this is her life now. This emptiness, this loneliness, this quiet desperation, it's not a phase she's passing through. It's the destination she chose. And now she has to live in it. Jung called this individuation, the process of becoming who you actually are by facing what you've actually done. She's individuating right now, but it's not empowering. It's humbling. She's becoming a person who knows what regret feels like at 3 in the morning. A person who understands that some mistakes don't have solutions. A person who carries the weight of a choice she can't undo. Her friends notice the change. She's quieter now, less performative. The inspirational posts stop. The dating updates disappear. She's not pretending anymore. She's just existing. And existing without purpose is the closest thing to death a living person can experience. She goes to work. She comes home. She watches shows she doesn't care about. She scrolls through feeds that make her feel worse. Repeat. Epictetus taught that freedom is wanting what you have. She has freedom now, the kind she said she wanted, but she doesn't want it anymore, because she's learning that freedom without connection is just permission to be alone. And being alone isn't peaceful when it's permanent. It's just loud silence, the kind that echoes with everything you're not saying to anyone. Here's what happens to her memory during this phase. It stops being kind. For months, her brain protected her by highlighting your flaws. Every bad moment glowed. Every mistake magnified. That's how she justified leaving. But now the protection is gone, and her memory starts showing her what she refused to see before. The way you looked at her when she was sick. The stupid jokes only you two understood. The 1,000 small kindnesses she took for granted because they were constant. Freud called this the return of the repressed in full force. Everything she buried comes back, not as nostalgia, as evidence. Evidence that she had something real and convinced herself it was ordinary. Evidence that ordinary love is actually the rarest thing. Evidence that she traded substance for sparkle and ended up with neither. Month 12. 1 full year. And here's what she knows now that she didn't know then. You weren't her problem. Boredom was her problem. Restlessness was her problem. The belief that life owed her constant excitement was her problem. You were just the person standing closest when she decided to blow up her life. And now she's living in the rubble. Robert Greene teaches that all human behavior is driven by one of two forces, the desire to gain power or the fear of losing it. She acted from the desire to gain power. She thought leaving would give her leverage, control, options. What she didn't understand is that some power only exists within structure. Outside that structure, it evaporates. She had power as your wife, as your partner, as someone chosen. Out here, she has nothing. She's just another profile, another face, another option. Someone swipes past. This is when the real questions start. Not the dramatic ones, the quiet ones. What if I had tried harder? What if I had been more patient? What if I had focused on fixing us instead of finding someone new? These questions don't come with answers. They just sit there, heavy, permanent, growing roots in her mind. Jordan Peterson talks about responsibility. He says, "You're stuck with yourself. You can change your circumstances, but you're still the person making the choices." She changed her circumstances. Different city maybe, different apartment, different routine, but she's still herself, still restless, still dissatisfied, still searching for something external to fix something internal. And that pattern is destroying her. She starts noticing something else. The married couples around her. She used to look at them with pity. Poor things, stuck in their boring routines. Now, she looks at them with envy. They have someone to text during the day, someone to cook with, someone to complain to about nothing. They're not free, but they're not alone. And alone is so much worse than she ever imagined. Schopenhauer said, "Life swings like a pendulum between pain and boredom." She thought marriage was boredom, so she swung toward pain. And now she realizes boredom was actually peace, stability, safety. She called it settling, but settling is just another word for choosing something real over something imaginary. And she chose imaginary. And imaginary doesn't keep you warm at night. Here's the part that breaks her completely. She sees you with someone new. Maybe it's serious, maybe it's not. Doesn't matter. What matters is the way you look at this person. Present, engaged, happy. You're not damaged. You're not bitter. You moved on. And that image confirms her worst fear. The problem wasn't the marriage. The problem was her. You're capable of partnership. You're capable of showing up. You're capable of making someone feel chosen. Just not her anymore. Nietzsche warned, "Be careful when fighting monsters that you don't become one." She fought against what she called your flaws, your predictability, your routine, and in fighting them, she became the monster, the one who destroys, the one who abandons, the one who chooses chaos over commitment. That's her identity now, and she hates it. Month 13, year 2 begins, and nothing gets better. It just gets familiar. The loneliness becomes her baseline. The regret becomes her companion. The what-ifs become her soundtrack. She's not healing, she's just getting used to the pain. Like someone adjusting to chronic illness. It never goes away. You just learn to function around it. This is the final stage, and it's not closure. It's calcification. The pain doesn't leave. It just hardens into something she carries forever. Robert Greene calls this the permanent scar of broken strategy. When you execute a plan that fails, you don't just lose the objective. You lose faith in your own judgment. And that loss is more devastating than any external defeat. She's living with a new truth now. A truth that wakes her up at night. A truth that sits in her chest like concrete. She destroyed something that was working. Not perfect, working. And working is rare. She thought she could do better. But better doesn't exist. There's just different. And different came with costs she never calculated. Here's what her dating life looks like 2 years out. She's not excited anymore. She's exhausted. She goes on dates out of obligation, out of some vague hope that maybe this time will be different. But it's never different. Same questions, same small talk, same polite ending that leads nowhere. She's learned that chemistry is random, compatibility is rare, and finding both in the same person is nearly impossible. Jung said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there's a reaction, both are transformed." She had that reaction with you. That transformation, it took years to build. Years of learning each other. Years of becoming a unit. She thought she could find it again with someone new. But you can't manufacture chemistry. You can't force transformation. It either happens or it doesn't. And it's not happening. What makes this unbearable is watching her friends move forward. They're buying houses, having kids, celebrating anniversaries. Their lives are deepening. Hers is stuck. Not stuck, moving forward. Stuck in the same shallow loop. New date, same disappointment. New match, same emptiness. She's not building anything. She's just cycling through temporary distractions. Marcus Aurelius taught, you have power over your mind, not outside events. But she gave up her power. She gave up the one space where she had real influence. The marriage, the partnership, the daily choice to build something together. Out here, she has no power. She's subject to algorithms, to other people's choices, to randomness. And randomness doesn't care about effort, or deserve, or intention. Month 18. She's completely different now. Not better, harder. There's a bitterness that's settled into her features. You can see it in photos. The smile doesn't reach her eyes anymore. The light is gone. She's not depressed exactly. She's resigned. Resigned to the fact that this is her life. This is what she chose. And choice is permanent. Hobbes said, the natural state of man is war. She's at war now, not with you, with herself. The part of her that made the decision versus the part that regrets it. They battle every day, and there's no winner. Just ongoing conflict that drains her energy until there's nothing left. She starts doing something she swore she'd never do. She rewrites history to cope, not to others, to herself. She tells herself the marriage was worse than it was, that you were worse than you were, because accepting that she left something good is too painful. So she invents a narrative where leaving was her only option, where you were impossible, where she had no choice. It's a lie, but it's a lie that lets her survive. Albert Ellis called this irrational belief maintenance. When reality contradicts what we want to be true, we distort reality instead of updating our beliefs. She's distorting now, full time. It's the only way she can get through the day without collapsing. But distortion takes energy, and she's running out. 2 years in, she looks different, older, tired. The stress has aged her. You can see it in her face, in her posture, in the way she moves through the world like she is carrying something heavy that no one else can see, because she is. She's carrying the weight of permanent regret, and that weight doesn't get lighter, it just becomes familiar. Robert Greene's final lesson on power is this: the greatest victories are the ones where you don't have to fight. She fought. She fought for freedom, for independence, for the chance to find something better, and she won the fight, but she lost the war, because the war was never external, it was internal, and you can't win an internal war by changing external circumstances. Here's what she knows now, deep in her bones, in a way she'll never say out loud. You weren't perfect, but you were hers. You weren't exciting every day, but you were present every day. You weren't a fantasy, but you were real. And real is what matters when the excitement fades and the validation runs out, and all you're left with is the question, who is still here? Nobody's still here for her. She has friends, she has family, she has casual connections, but nobody's here in the way you were. Nobody knows her in the way you did. Nobody's committed to her in the way you were. And that knowledge is a knife that twists every single day. Plato said, the price good men pay for indifference to public affairs is to be ruled by evil men. The price she's paying for indifference to her marriage is to be ruled by regret. And regret is a ruthless master. It doesn't negotiate. It doesn't forgive. It just reminds you, over and over, that you had something and you threw it away. She'll spend the rest of her life wondering what would have happened if she'd stayed, if she'd tried harder, if she'd been more grateful, if she'd fought for the marriage the way she fought to leave it. These questions will haunt her, not dramatically, quietly, in small moments. When she's alone on holidays, when she sees old couples holding hands, when she realizes she's going to grow old without a witness to her life. That's the real tragedy. Not that she's alone, but that she chose to be. She had a witness, someone who knew her story from the inside, someone who would have stayed, and she walked away. She walked away believing something better was waiting. But nothing was waiting, just empty space. An empty space doesn't hold you when you're scared. It doesn't laugh at your jokes. It doesn't remember your birthday. It just echoes back your own loneliness until you can't tell the difference between freedom and abandonment. This is where every divorced wife ends up. Not all of them, but most. The ones who left chasing a feeling instead of protecting a foundation, they end up here. In this psychological prison they built themselves, surrounded by freedom they can't enjoy, haunted by a choice they can't undo, living in the shadow of what was unable to build anything new that matters as much. Robert Greene's final warning: understand this before you act. Every choice has a cost, and some costs don't show up until it's too late to pay them back. She paid, she's still paying, and she never stopped paying, because the currency of regret is time, and time only moves in one direction, forward, away from what was, toward what will never be again.